Good evening, everyone, or good middle of the night, as the case may be. Thank you very much for being here. I'm Hari-kirtana, and as always, it is a great pleasure for me to be here with you, an honor to have you here with me. And just to make sure that I can be heard, if you would do me the favor of raising your hands in the participant window. Thank you very much for that reassurance. All right. For those of you who are new to the satsang, we'll do just a quick search for, oh, there it is. All right, a little bit of quick housekeeping. You can adjust your audio settings and your viewing options in the upper right-hand corner, I believe. You need not worry about your microphone or video camera. I cannot see or hear you, even though I know you're there. If you would like to be heard, you can type something into the chat window. Annie, thank you very much for demonstrating how that is done. You can also pop something into the Q&A box if you so desire. And that takes care of our housekeeping chores. I'm very, very happy to see so many of you joining me here in real time this evening. Our last class, chapter 18, the yoga of perfect renunciation. We spoke about our choice, spiritual or material consciousness, the scope of our free will, according to the Bhagavad-gita. We took a look at Krishna's position as the supreme director and heard Krishna's closing argument, as well as circling back to confirmation of our free will. We're going to pick up right there at verse 63. We covered verses 58 through 63 last week. This evening, we come to the crescendo of the Bhagavad-gita, the crown jewel of transcendental knowledge, the most secret of all secret secrets, is what we're going to speak about this evening. And before we speak about anything further, we will chant our invocation mantra. So, quick explanation for those of you who are new to transliterated Sanskrit. Sanskrit rendered in the Roman alphabet with diacritics, marks that give some indication of how you pronounce each letter. The dot over an M indicates that we close our lips as we normally do with an M, but we also at the same time close the back of our tongue to the back of the roof of our mouth, making a round shape with our mouth. A bar over a vowel, in this case an A, indicates a long or more open sound for that vowel, as opposed to without a bar, a shorter and more contained sound of that vowel. So with that information, I will chant our invocation mantra, and if you like, you can chant it back. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Translation: I offer my respects to the Supreme Person, Son of Vasudeva, who is the all-pervading transcendence, and who is also Krishna, the speaker of the Bhagavad-gita, the son of Vasudeva, known as Vasudeva. Last week, whoops, let's stay with last week. Last week, verse 63, Krishna has made his closing argument and says, thus I have described to you, Arjuna, the most confidential secret of all. Carefully consider everything that I have said, and then do as you wish. So in the Sanskrit for this verse, itite jnanam, knowledge, akyatam guyad guya. So guya guyataram. Guyat means then confidential, and guyataram means still more confidential. So we have these different levels of confidentiality that Krishna is revealing in the Bhagavad-gita. We'll speak a little bit more about that in just a moment, because even though Krishna has just said, I have given you the most confidential of confidential knowledge, he's still going to take it one step further to something even more confidential than the most confidential knowledge, which we find in this week's verses 64, 65, and 66. So we will look at those in a moment, but I just want to come back to the phrase at the bottom, yatechasi tata kuru, meaning as you like, you may act, indicating that the Supreme Person does not interfere with our independence as living entities, which is a very unique aspect of the Bhagavad-gita from the standpoint of comparative theology. We are accustomed to, in the West, to a commanding God. A God says, thou shalt do this, or thou shalt not do that. And here we are hearing from a person speaking from the position of God who says, I've given you my opinion. Now do what you like. Which, in my opinion, sheds a lot more light on how it is we could be in the situation we are in. That is to say, spiritual beings, eternal spiritual beings in temporary material bodies struggling with the entanglement of material existence. So this now brings us to this week's verses, 64 through 66. And we will take them one at a time. And here I'm going to introduce the translation first, rather than the Sanskrit, as I usually do. And hopefully that will make sense to you in just a moment. So here, after Krishna has said, I've told you the most confidential thing, now make up your own mind as to what you think you should do. Next, he says, hear once more my ultimate message, the greatest of all secrets. Because you are my very dear friend, I am speaking for the sake of your well-being. So now let's take a look at the Sanskrit, and we'll chant this. You've already heard about dots over M's and bars over vowels. The dot under an H indicates that you're going to echo the vowel that precedes the H back when the dot under the H shows up at the end of a word at the end of a line. An accent mark over an S indicates an SH sound that's sounded from way back by the hinge in your jaw rather than from behind your teeth. The SH sound from behind your teeth is indicated by a dot under an S, which shows up a little bit later in this verse. So the difference is the accent mark is a sound. You're going to curl your tongue back and make the sound from the back of your mouth. And then a regular SH sound, which is going to be a little higher pitched. Shh. Dot under an R indicates that you're going to curl your tongue back about 2/3 of the way to the roof of your mouth, as opposed to your top teeth over your bottom lip. A dot under an N means the N sound is made in the middle of the roof of your mouth rather than right behind your teeth. which comes a little bit more out of your whole head than just out of your mouth. An apostrophe before a vowel indicates an apostrophe before a consonant indicates a vowel dropped, and the vowel that ends the word that precedes the word with the vowel dropped will just run right into the word with the vowel dropped. So this is a rule of euphonic combination in order to make the poetry work. A regular D is just a D sound, but a D with a dot is once again sounded with the tongue at the center of the roof of the mouth. The difference is D and G. And that should cover everything, I think. No, a C is always a CH sound, and the CH sound is also from the center of your mouth. So it's a ch sound as opposed to a ch sound. And there you go, that's got it. So with that information, I will chant each line, and if you like, you can chant each line back. Here we go. Sarva guyatamam bhuyaha. Shrinu me paramam vachaha. Ishtasi me dridham iti. Tato vakshyami te hitam. So this first phrase, sarva guyatamam, the most confidential of all. There are 5 levels of instructions in terms of confidentiality in the Bhagavad-gita. There are general instructions for ordinary folks to help them gain freedom from attachments associated with the body. So basic spiritual 101 information. We're not these material bodies. We're eternal spiritual beings in temporary material bodies. So these instructions are meant just to start the process of getting us to identify with our spiritual nature and understand the distinction between the spiritual self and the material body. Then Guya, secret instructions, which is knowledge of Brahman, the spiritual substance, the spiritual substratum of all reality, of all existence. Then Guyatar, more secret instructions, that is to say, an increase in confidentiality, which is knowledge of the supersoul and the distinction between the Atma, the individual soul, you and I, and the Param Atma, the supreme person residing within the heart of all beings. Then, most secret instructions are Guyatam, pure transcendental devotional service, bhakti yoga. But bhakti yoga, without the taste or feeling of intimate relationship, that is to say, there are different moods of devotion, and it can be devotion in a kind of a neutral mood, just understanding that I am very small, the Supreme Being is very great, I should obviously be serving the Supreme Being. So neutrality. Then the idea of an identity as being a servant, where there's still some distance. The most secret of all secrets is this phrase right here, sarva guyatamam, which is the revelation of Krishna's heart, which will show up in these next couple of verses. He gives his reason for giving this instruction to Arjuna as being affection. So that's sarvaguyatamam rather. Now, notice that he says, hear once more my ultimate message. Not, here it is, I've been saving it all this time, but hear again, once more, hear my ultimate message, the greatest of all secrets. Because you are my very dear friend, I am speaking for the sake of your well-being. So this indicates that we've actually kind of heard this before, either directly or by implication. And one of the very nice illustrations that we can think of when we think of what the Bhagavad-gita is we can think of the Bhagavad-gita like a treasure chest. The first 6 chapters, which are primarily about karma yoga and dhyana yoga, yoga of action, yoga of meditation, they're like the lower shell of the treasure chest, and it's made of gold. So imagine a golden treasure chest with the base, the golden shell on the bottom. And then the last 6 chapters, which are primarily about jnana, the yoga of knowledge or understanding. They're like a jewel-encrusted cover, the lid, but bedecked with all kinds of precious gems. And the key that opens the chest are the next 2 verses that are coming up. And the treasure inside the chest is the middle 6 chapters, which are about bhakti, which are about devotion to Krishna, the Supreme Person, as Krishna has established that he himself is that Supreme Being. So in terms of confidentiality, you have knowledge of Brahman, the impersonal, all-pervading spiritual stuff of which everything is ultimately made. Then the next level of confidentiality is Paramatma, the friend of all beings, the localized aspect of the Supreme Person in the heart. And then finally, Bhagavan, the Supreme Person, the personal form of the Supreme Being. Hence, throughout the Bhagavad-gita, we hear Shri Bhagavan Uvacha whenever Krishna speaks, because Krishna is the personal form, Bhagavan, of the Supreme Being. And that person who has a form, a set of senses, but spiritual, transcendental senses, through which interactions such as relationships can take place, is about to reveal his heart. And that is the ultimate treasure. But we're going to see in just a moment that we've heard this before. So let's go to our next verse. And if you have any questions or comments along the way at any time, go ahead and pop your questions or comments into the chat, and I'll keep my eye out for them. So this time I'm going to go back to Sanskrit first, then the translation. In this verse, there's no real new information insofar as the Sanskrit pronunciation goes. The diacritics and their meanings have already been described. So I will chant each line, and if you like, you can chant each line back. Manmana bhava mad bhakto madhyaji mang namaskuru mami vaishyasi satyam te pratijane priyosi me. Translation. Direct your mind toward me. Become my devotee. Offer your sacrifices to me and act in reverence for me. Thus, you will surely come to me. I promise you this because you are so loved by me. So, here is Krishna revealing his heart. And this may sound like something we've heard before, and if it does, it's because we have, except for the very end. So here, verse 65 ends with Satyam te prachijane priyosi me. I promise you this. This is true. You can count on this because you are so dear to me. I have so much affection for you. Back, so this phrase at the end is what's different from what we find in the 9th chapter in the center of the Bhagavad-gita, which is the portion that focuses on bhakti. That is this, we find here in verse 34, the same exact phrase, the same verse, except for the last line. This last line, yuktvaivam atmanam mat parayanaha, means having completely absorbed yourself in me alone. So here, the verse reads, direct your mind toward me, become my devotee, offer your sacrifices to me and act in reverence for me. Thus you will surely come to me, having completely absorbed yourself in me alone. So back in the 9th chapter, 34th verse, very close to the center of Krishna's teachings, Krishna says, make the effort. Commit yourself to the process of completely absorbing yourself in me alone. Make me the exclusive object of your meditation, your devotion, your actions, and your worship. If you make the effort, then satyam te pratijani priyosi me, success is guaranteed. So this verse now is the assurance that the result of devotional yoga will be achieved if these 4 things are part of our program. Satyam. So satya, truthfulness, that which is true is always true. It is objective truth that is referred to by satya or satyam. So satyam here means a promise, truthfulness, eternally, incontrovertibly true. Krishna gives himself in exchange for these 4 actions, and he guarantees it because priyo si me. Priyo means dear, beloved, cherished. So because you are so loved by me, I promise you that I will give myself to you if you give yourself to me. Essentially, the promise is, if you love me, I'll love you back. I love you anyway, completely and unconditionally. But if you love me back, you're going to feel it. You're going to feel all of it. And it's unlimited because I'm the supreme being. I have unlimited, unconditional love for you. And you can experience that love just by making an effort to love me back. So we have these 4 elements in this verse. Constant meditation on Krishna, absorb your mind in me, devotion to Krishna, become a devotee, an instrument of divine will. So what does it mean to be devoted? If you're a devoted fan of a particular band, you follow them all over their tour, you're at every show. The band, recognizes you. If you showed up at a show and you were in the front row in Milwaukee, And then, you know, at the next show in Des Moines, you're there again. You're right in the front row. You're there at every show. The band knows you. The band sees that you're there. You're obviously devoted to the band. And by that devotion, there may be some, you know, special exchange, special relationship. Same thing, except you can do that with Krishna instead of whatever band you would like to follow around on tour. You can actually go on tour with Krishna. Offering all actions to Krishna. So this includes now karma yoga, the yoga of action. Just whatever you do, you make it an offering. And we've heard this before as well. Whatever you eat, whatever you offer or give away, whatever you do, make that an offering to me. And then finally, engaging in worship. To revere Krishna, the supreme person, Bhagavan, the personal form of the absolute truth, which is understood in the Bhagavad-gita to be the highest revelation of the absolute truth. Shana has a question in the Q&A box. Does this mean if you devote yourself to God, or only if you devote yourself specifically to Krishna as that particular embodiment of God? So earlier, we heard how Krishna reciprocates with everyone in whatever manner they approach them. And he also recommended that one should approach his representative. We all have a different relationship with Krishna, and Krishna is not limited. He can appear in any way, in any form. And anyone who is a pure devotee, who teaches that love of God is the highest thing and gives instruction on how to love God, how to act in the world so that every action is an offering to God. That's pure devotional service. And that puts you in touch with the personal heart of God. So it may very well be that the particular form of Krishna is not the form that has captured your heart. But the word Krishna means all attractive. So, however you are attracted to God, in that way, Krishna is there, because Krishna is the attraction. Krishna is the attractive factor. And this is also going to be an important thing to consider when we look at the next verse, which is often misunderstood as a directive to give up all other faith forms or forms of religion, rather than giving up subordinate forms of religious principles, because there's one highest religious principle that we're about to hear about. So one's devotion to God on the highest level is not necessarily the form of Krishna, but it can be. And in the Bhagavad-gita, the emphasis is on Krishna, because this is the form where God where God presents himself in order to engage in this topmost level of loving exchange. So I hope that answers your question, Shana. And if there's more to it, then please go ahead and give me some follow-up. Okay, good. Sue, if a student was not comfortable or used to the name Krishna, would one be able to substitute Supreme Being? This may be similar to what was just asked. No, it's similar but different and important. You may have noticed, any of you who have been following this satsang for a while, that I use numerous words as synonyms for Krishna, the Supreme Being, the Supreme Person, the Absolute Truth, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, the summum bonum, if you want to get into the Latin. The concept of Krishna is a little different from the concept of God in the Western tradition. and making some distinction can be a good thing. But it's not necessary, and it certainly isn't necessary for starters. The assumption that people make is that Krishna is a Hindu god. And I make it my business to disabuse people of this assumption. Because that's never been my understanding, nor do I think it is that it's a complete understanding of the concept of Krishna as the supreme personality of Godhead. So you don't have to start there. You can use the Supreme Being for starters, which is a good place to start. I like to move from there to the Supreme Person, because the Supreme Being, in order to be supreme, would have to be complete. And in order to be complete, the attribute of being a person would have to be included. If we are the created, then the creator must have everything we've got. That's just logic. So if we have personality and we are persons, then the supreme person must also have that attribute of being a person. However, in order to be complete, the supreme being would also have the attribute of not being a person. Hence, Brahman, the undifferentiated spiritual substratum of existence, is also the supreme being. And some people may only go that far. Some people, the yogis who meditate on Ishvara within the heart, go to the stage of Paramatma, and maybe they stop there. Maybe they misidentify the Atma with the Paramatma and stop there. Maybe someone can relate to the idea of a supreme person with whom you can have a personal relationship. The idea that God would naturally be the most beautiful person. And Krishna is that aspect of the supreme being where the beauty of God is emphasized rather than the majesty of God. Now, someone may feel attracted to the majesty of God, and therefore the Vishnu forms are there. And then in the Vishnu forms, the Aishvarya, the opulence, the majesty of the Supreme Being is prominent. Krishna is understood to be like the Supreme Being when the Supreme Being goes home from work and just chills with his family and friends. And therefore is more intimate, more personal in that respect. And his beauty is what is prominent because his majesty is kind of set to the side in the personality of Krishna. Anyway, so Sue, I hope that answers your question in terms of, how you introduce students to the concept of Krishna and that it's not really necessary to start there. And certainly you don't want to start there if there's an assumption that Krishna belongs only to a particular religion, as opposed to a universal concept of a supreme person. Yet that personal relationship version makes sense. Yeah, but the Bhagavad-gita doesn't start there. You have to work your way up to it. And so here we are at the end of the Bhagavad-gita. Krishna is now revealing this very intimate personal information about himself, revealing his heart to Arjuna and by extension to us. But we didn't just jump right to that. This is all the way now at the end. So similarly, when working with students who are interested in yoga in general, bhakti yoga in particular, start at the beginning, work your way towards the most confidential knowledge. Back to Shana. You don't have, okay. All right, thank you. All right, any other questions about what we've covered so far? Okay, so now while we are on the topic of Krishna specifically, I'm going to take a little detour and share with you some descriptions of Krishna that are found in another Vedic text called the Brahma Samhita. There are various places like the Srimad Bhagavatam, the books back behind me, where there are descriptions of Krishna's personal form. This one book, there's one chapter of this one book called the Brahma Samhita, which is understood to be the revelation to Brahma, the first created being in the universe, and his recitation of his realization. It's beautiful poetry. So in the Krishna Bhakti tradition, of course, concentration of the mind on the form of Krishna constitutes the most confidential part of knowledge. And this is disclosed to Arjuna. And there's this beautiful revelation that I'll share with you in the Brahma Samhita that corresponds to what Krishna is revealing to Arjuna. So the Sanskrit is also very beautiful. I'm going to share that with you. We won't chant it on the screen, but just so you hear it, I'm going to chant 3 verses from the Brahma Samhita and give you the translation. Venam kvanantam aravinda dalaya taksham barhavatam samasitam buddha sundarangam kandarpakoti kamani avishesha shobham govindamadi purusham tamaham bhajami. I worship Govinda, the primeval Lord, who is adept at playing on his flute, with blooming eyes like lotus petals, with head decked with peacock's feather, with the figure of beauty tinged with the hue of blue clouds, and his unique loveliness charming millions of cupids. Angani yasya sakalendriya vritti manti pashyanti panti kalayanti chiram jaganti ananda chinmaya sadujrala vigrahasya govindamadi purusham tamaham bhajami. I worship Govinda, the primeval Lord, whose transcendental form is full of bliss, truth, substantiality, and is thus full of the most dazzling splendor. Each of the limbs of that transcendental figure possesses in himself the full-fledged functions of all the organs, and eternally sees, maintains, and manifests the infinite universes, both spiritual and mundane. Pantastakoti shatavatsara sampragamyo vayoratapi manaso muni pungavanam sopyasti yat prapadasam yavichintya tattve govindamadi purusham tamaham bhajami. I worship Govinda, the primeval Lord, only the tip of the toe of whose lotus feet is approached by the yogis who aspire after the transcendental and betake themselves to pranayama by drilling the respiration, or by the jnanis who try to find out the non-differentiated Brahman by the process of elimination of the mundane, extending over thousands of millions of years. If you would like to read the entire text of the Brahma Samhita, I've just put the link to the Brahma Samhita chapter 5 into the chat, so you can use that. And that way you can read it in its entirety. It's a very beautiful poetry describing the personal form of Bhagavan, Govinda, another name for Krishna, meaning the one who gives pleasure to the cows and to the senses. And that brings us to verse 66, which is our final and pinnacle of transcendental instruction. And once again, I believe by this point I have covered all of the diacritical marks and their pronunciation indications. So once again, I will chant each line, and if you like, you can chant each line back. Sarva dharman parityajya mamekam sharanam vraja aham tvam sarva papebhyo mokshayishyami ma shuchaha. Translation: abandon all varieties of righteousness, dharma, and come to me alone for shelter. I shall free you from all misfortune. Do not fear. All right, let's go back and look at the Sanskrit. Sarva dharman. So here we find the word dharma, meaning righteousness, ways to respond to one's destiny, the essential nature of a thing. Here, dharma, meaning all varieties of religious principles, sarva dharman, all varieties of religious principles, indicates material righteousness, formulaic or dogmatic religion, lesser dharmas or subordinate principles of religion. Here, Krishna is giving the ultimate dharma, the ultimate principle of religion that all other principles of religion are subordinate to. And if you just do this one thing, then all the others are covered. All the others are taken care of. So Sarva Dharman is the beginning of the very last instruction in the Bhagavad-gita. This is the last substantive instruction of the Gita. And notice how we have come full circle. The very first verse of the Bhagavad-gita begins, dharma kshetre. On the field of righteousness. Kshetre means field. So dharma kshetre, on the field of righteousness, Kurukshetra, the battlefield of Kurukshetra. Then, Kim Akurvata, what did they do, O Sanjaya? The overarching theme of the Bhagavad Gita is dharma, the best way for us to respond to our destiny. So the Bhagavad Gita answers the question that is asked in the beginning. The question that's asked in the beginning is, what did my sons and the sons of Pandu do when they assembled on the battlefield, the field of righteousness, preparing to fight? How did they respond to their destiny? And the Gita is about what's the best way for Arjuna to respond to his destiny? And by extension, what is the best way for us to respond to our destiny? So this is the overarching theme of the entire Bhagavad Gita, dharma. How to act in such a way as to harmonize our conditioned material nature with our eternal spiritual nature and harmonize ourselves as a part of a complete whole. How to live in harmony with cosmic order and with in harmony with the ultimate absolute truth. So now we're going to look at this line by line. Sarva dharman parityajya, abandoning all other varieties of religious principles. Now, sometimes dharma is simply translated as religion. So you get a translation that says abandon all varieties of religion. And it's easy to make a mistake in thinking that what this means is that whatever religion you're practicing, you should give it up and practice this other religion instead. And if we mistake the Bhagavad-gita to be a Hindu religious text and Krishna to be a Hindu god, then it sounds like the advocation of sectarian religion, which is exactly what it is not. Abandoning all other varieties of religious principles is what is actually meant here. It doesn't mean that you should give up whatever form of faith inspires your love for God. Whatever inspires you to do this instruction, taking shelter of the Supreme Person, exclusive shelter of the Supreme Person. That's religion. That's going to, and remember, we're defining religion as again, ligio, to connect. So religion and yoga, union, those two words are synonyms. And throughout the Bhagavad-gita, Krishna has been advocating for one to practice yoga, for Arjuna to become a yogi in all circumstances, for the sake of making this connection. So bhakti yoga, the yoga of devotion, is what Krishna is recommending as the highest last word in yoga. And its ultimate expression is to set aside all other kinds of elements of yogic practice or ritualistic religious practices, and mam ekam sharanam vraja, come to me alone for shelter. So sharanam means shelter or surrender is another way of translating sharanam. Giving yourself over, abiding in, taking protection from, offering oneself to. All of this is implied by the word sharanam. So, mam, unto me, ekam, only, eka, like one. This is like exclusive. Go, vraja, to me. Then, taking the words a little bit out of order here, because this is just how Sanskrit rolls, aham tvam moksha yishyami. So, you may recognize the word moksha, liberation. So, aham means I. And tvam means you. Moksha yishyami will deliver, will liberate. So, I will liberate you from sarva pape bhyo, from all reactions to sinful actions or all misfortune. So misfortune is the word that is sometimes used to indicate bad karma or the results of sinful actions. And sinful actions, now of course sin and sinful, these are loaded words, especially as we come from a Western orientation with religion. Bad karma or sinful action means action that is not in harmony with cosmic order. Action that causes harm to others. Here Arjuna is being asked to fight, to wage war. Obviously, others are going to be harmed. There will be the killing of enemies. There will be the fatalities to his own allies. There will be collateral damage. Even though this battle is being fought under strict rules of warfare where only combatants are involved, it is actually against the rules to kill an unarmed combatant. There's no question of non-combatants being involved in this at all. But war is messy, it's horrible, it's atrocious. It's violence. And Arjuna's concern is, I'm going to be responsible for all of this violence. And here Krishna is assuring that if you surrender to me, I'm going to protect you from the reactions to your sinful actions. Anything that might otherwise be understood to be sinful. Now that doesn't mean that this gives us a license to simply declare on our own authority that we are acting on behalf of God, and therefore whatever we do is not sinful, even if it involves harming others for our own speculative conception of righteousness. Because surrendering to Krishna, to the supreme person or being, means that you are abiding by the will of the supreme. To become an instrument of divine will means to align oneself with principles of divinity. And Krishna, throughout the Bhagavad-gita, has described what the principles of divine behavior are. So you have the guidelines to tell us what the parameters are for divine action, and specifically what constitutes action in the mode of goodness and beyond the mode of goodness. So abiding by scriptural injunction, taking guidance from a higher authority other than ourselves, which includes fakakta interpretations of scripture. Because the easiest way to get irreligion masquerading as religion is to take an authentic religious scripture and interpret it in some way that screws some whole different conception out of it that was never intended by the author of that scripture. So that's the important point about this phrase, sarva papebhyo, is that this is not a license to just decide for yourself that you can do whatever you want if you're doing it for God. Because what you can do for God has parameters that don't include a lot of what some people will interpret as being violence justified by religion. This is always the challenge with this. And then, ma shuchaha, have no fear. Proceed, and you as long as you're taking shelter of me, you don't have anything to worry about. I've totally got your back. So Krishna has described various kinds of knowledge and various processes of religion and various elements of principles of religion, knowledge of Brahman, knowledge of the supersoul, the Paramatma, knowledge of different kinds of orders and statuses of social life, so you understand how the material world is organized, how human beings fall into different ways of being according to the qualities of material nature that they're influenced by, knowledge of renunciation, knowledge of detachment, how one goes about controlling the mind and senses, and the importance of doing so, the techniques of meditation, objects of meditation. He's described so many different things. And now here, Krishna is telling Arjuna, give up all that stuff. You don't really have to worry about all of these things that I've explained to you if you just simply take this one step of surrendering to me, looking to me for your shelter. I will take care of everything else. Any questions about this most confidential part of knowledge, the essence of the entire Bhagavad-gita? Please share with me any comments in addition to questions, any reflections, anything that comes up insofar as how that sounds to you now that we have arrived at this crescendo of the Bhagavad-gita and the crown jewel of transcendental knowledge that the Bhagavad-gita has to offer us. Oops. Javier, this has been my favorite class of yours thus far. Thank you for speaking so sweetly about Krishna. Oh, well, you're very welcome. Thank you very much for your kind words about this class. I hope you have all enjoyed it and gotten something useful out of it. Robert, feeling grateful, so grateful and joyful after hearing this knowledge. Oh, well, this is what happens when you hear what Krishna has to say about himself in the most intimate way of Krishna revealing his heart. Because Krishna is beautiful, then Krishna's speech is also beautiful. So we've covered these 4 final instructional verses, the crescendo of the Bhagavad-gita, the crown jewel of transcendental knowledge, verses 64 through 66. And if you have any additional questions, oh, good. All right. Lisa Marie, I'm very happy to hear that. I hope that everyone is feeling encouraged and comforted by this teaching. That is, of course, what it is meant for, because just as Arjuna is very dear to Krishna, we are also very dear to Krishna. And hence the Bhagavad-gita is spoken. Annie, I can never figure out how to make that final leap of faith to surrender. One of my teachers spoke about this. He was contemplating this instruction, and he tried to gather all of his willpower into his heart to just make that leap. And he said to himself, and he even said it out loud, I surrender. And nothing happened. It's a process. There's a pretty good chance that there's more surrender going on than you might even realize. Each little step that we take in the process of surrender, Krishna takes 10 steps towards us. So just think in terms of what's the next step and take that. So, questions after the fact, for those of you here and for those of you there who are watching this after the fact, please write to me, Hari at Hari-kirtana.com. I will always be very, very happy to hear from you. Next week, I will answer the question, if it's such a big secret, why am I telling you about it? It's the most confidential knowledge, the biggest secret of all secrets. And I just told you. If it's such a secret, why did Krishna tell us in the Bhagavad-gita, a book that has been around for thousands of years that anybody can read any number of editions of? I will answer this question, or Krishna will actually answer this question, and I will share his answer with you and give you a little bit of my own personal take on that answer. We'll cover verses 67 through 71. And then in 2 weeks, our final class, our 108th class on the Bhagavad Gita, we will discuss Arjuna and the hero's journey. Where is he along that path? Sanjaya, the narrator of the Bhagavad Gita, his mind is blown. We will look at his reaction to being privy to this conversation, and we will discuss the conclusion of the Bhagavad Gita, and I will summarize the teachings for you. The wonderful thing about the Bhagavad Gita is that you can just keep reading it and reading it and reading it, and it just keeps getting better every single time. There will be other classes in the future beyond this final class. I'm going to be doing some other things. I will, of course, let you know. And I am always available as you go back and reread or re-listen to classes to discuss any new reflection, realization, or question that comes up. So you all know where to find me. Annie, thank you very much for your kind thought. Shana, you're very welcome. Lisa Marie, you are welcome as well. Robert, you are welcome. You are all welcome. Thank you all very much for being here. Sally, thank you so much for staying up. I'm very, very grateful of the extra effort that you made. For all the rest of you, Sally is many hours away, and it's late at night there. So thank you so much for being here. Annie, you're welcome. Cameron, of course, you are welcome as well. All right, I'm going to sign off, and I hope to see you next time, and I hope that you enjoy the rest of your evening. I'm looking forward to seeing you all again soon. Have a nice night.